evening, good day, everybody. Welcome to our Sunday evening Atheist Republic South Africa get together. Gives me a great pleasure to welcome my co-host Tersha. Forgive us for being a little bit late. The devil put me under a sleep curse on a Sunday afternoon. Tersha, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm well. We're heading into beautiful autumn, which I love. I had a splendid Sunday supper, or late lunch, early supper. I'm not sure, and I'm ready to hear what you have on offer tonight on this glorious. What is it? Is it Rising Sunday? What is it called? Easter Sunday?
I don't know. It's fucking Palm Sunday or Easter Sunday or something along those lines.
No. Palm Sunday was last week. Palm Sunday was
Okay. I get it.
Yeah.
So, the funny thing is, I was thinking a lot about Easter leading up to today, and the thing that really stood out to me is this concept. Because all atheists over the Easter period do this. Atheist is a public holiday. It's a pagan holiday. Blah 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 blah. So I said to myself, well, let's look at it from a different angle. Let's look at it from the angle of how can I say that this is actually a celebration of death. At the end of the day, Christians go, oh, he has risen, on the next day, Jesus is alive, blah, 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 blah. The tomb is empty. But what are they actually celebrating at the end of the day? They are celebrating death. And this led me down this path of looking into this whole concept of Christianity as a death cult. And the funny thing is, you will be surprised when I read you the similarities now, first of all. So let's have a quick look at the hallmarks of a death cult, right? So first of all, there is this, what they call eschatological obsession. So this is this obsession with an apocalypse and the end of days, and there are several places in the Bible, in Matthew especially, where Jesus warns of the end age, and John's Revelation. And, Christianity is built on this concept of a coming apocalypse, where the righteous are saved and the sinners are cast into the eternal pit of fire. And then also with the in conjunction with this apocalypse, there's also the salvation through death theme, and that hinges entirely on believing that the execution is an atonement for sins. Without this sacrificial death, you're going to face eternal separation from God, and that's from the Gospel of John, which is it's crazy. And the cults have exactly the same thing. You look at Heaven's Gate, for example, there was this obsession with the UFO going, and you look at Jim Jones's Kool-Aid cult in the jungle. There's the same concept.
But
it's weird how these themes just keep on repeating themselves. Very, very strange.
In the case of Christianity, it's not just a death cult; it's a death by suffering cult, because. If Jesus didn't suffer enough, then a quick death wouldn't have done the job. It had to be this long, drawn out suffering. Otherwise, it's just not good enough. Which is in itself, it's macabre in so many ways. If we think about it, it's one thing to have, if you think of prehistoric and ancient religions, to sacrifice an animal where you do it quickly and it's over and done with. And I don't get it, but I suppose I can sort of transplant myself. But in the case of Christianity, the suffering is really, really important, because that's where the actual atonement lies in. And my mom still has a number of religious friends, and they send her these messages. And I read one yesterday afternoon where it's so clear. I mean, this was before you and I spoke. I just said to my mom, I said, this is so bizarre, because it's all about you have to use your imagination to live through the suffering. It's not just dying, it's suffering. It's a cult of suffering.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But this is, this is the thing that was so interesting to me. You look at, for example, even I was, you can look at any of these Christian cults, and I mean, even the ones here in Kenya that we had in Shakaholo. What was that cult as well? Where how many people were, hundreds of people that they ended up. Being offed for that cult. The details elude me now.
Being starved. And again, the full extent of that massacre is possibly still yet to be known, because we don't really know how many bodies have been buried in that
right
space. But also, very important as well, that they were killed by starvation. I mean, this is a long, drawn out.
It's a very gruesome way to go.
It's terrible, and it's a mindset of you have to suffer. Suffering brings you close to God. Suffering is the way to reach your.
This is the next point. That are similar. It's this whole concept of ritualized suffering. You look for example at the way that Christians reenact the Passion Play, especially in Europe. This is big, people carrying crosses and, all this gore. There's also, I mean, it goes it's so ingrained into Christianity. Even if you look at stuff like this cannibalistic Eucharist that they have, where they're symbolically eating the flesh and drinking the blood, and oh my God, it's so gory. And then you get even, in the more extreme cases, and especially in the medieval times, there was this cult of, this idea of people whipping themselves, what they call it, self-flagellation, mortification.
Yes.
It's where they embraced physical pain as a path to holiness, and it's quite intense how this has even to today, like people glorify this idea of suffering, the suffering servant in the Bible and all of this nonsense. It's crazy.
And, it's very popular in the Philippines as well. I mean, in the Philippines, you have congregations of hundreds of people literally being crucified. In that extreme form of Roman Catholicism, where people literally have nails through their hands and feet. It's absolutely awful. And the other thing that just to, I don't want to piss on anybody's parade, but just so Christians also know, this idea of suffering for your God, it's not unique to Christianity. I mean, there's Indian cults, those guys that put those hooks through their backs and push steel pins through their cheeks. So this is it's not
right.
It's not unique to Christianity.
It's crazy. It's crazy how that works. But the whole thing is what I don't really see so much here in our neck of the woods, but there's some places in Europe and in the East especially where this is this whole Easter thing becomes a spectacle. It's like they have these parades. My friend who lives in Malta as well says that it's an annual thing. They and people line the streets to see this cross being carried, and it's weird. It's so macabre. I think this is the very last thing that Jesus would want to be reminded of if he ever returns. You know what I'm saying?
well, I can tell you that I spent 1990. I was a young au pair in Greece, and
Yes.
I I experienced the Greek Orthodox Easter, which is so foreign to me as a South African. You literally fast for a week, and then on Easter Friday you fast, and you just sort of lie low. And this is even people who are not really religious at any other time of the year. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
Saturday night around about 10 o'clock you go to church. Oh, and then you've prepared the lamb as well. All the family, that they cook the lamb, and then you go to church around about 10 at night, and at midnight the bells ring, and the holy flame that was brought from Jerusalem is and there's it's used to light a single candle that is then spread through the entire congregation, streets lined with
Right.
people.
Right. I also remember
It's
that.
a
Yeah.
massive thing. I mean, we
Yeah.
think the Easter long weekend is a big thing. We've got nothing on what it's like in the Roman Catholic and the Orthodox traditions,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
also this whole thing of you really have to focus on the suffering of Jesus to the extent that you don't eat, you're only allowed to drink water.
It's true. It's true. The modern crosses have got wheels that pull them around. It's true. Yeah, yeah. And yeah. This is another aspect of cult like leadership is that there's always this one very charismatic leader to a cult, and you'll find that in every single African church that we have here. I mean, like these leaders, I mean, look at these prophets and pastors and everybody. They become these exalted figures, and they make very serious claims. I mean, it started off, with Jesus making all these divine authority claims, and then, it's a logical procession, throughout the popes, and who speak on behalf of God, and then you get all these miracle working saints and clergy, and it's all, it fits that model, that cult model to a T, where all these saints and clergy, they claim to have healing powers, they see visions, and they make prophecies, and it's a bit of a hit and a miss, but whenever they get a hit, it just simply reinforces that leader's unquestionable status, and it's very crazy how that works. But here in Africa especially, we have a very unique flavor of charismatic cult leader that has infested the African churches. People, you'll see videos of these guys doing miracles, and miracles via Photoshop and Adobe, and it's crazy how that works. But this is the hallmark of a cult. There's always a charismatic leader. So whenever you find that people lead by charisma instead of by the substance of their personality, that's always a big warning sign to me. And you'll see that everywhere. I mean, you only need to look to the northwest of the globe from where we are to see how a personality cult has infected an entire country. I don't want to talk politics. It's not what we are here to discuss. But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy
But
how that is. Yeah, yeah,
we don't want to talk politics, and that's not the purpose. However, that being said, the regrettable truth is that when political leaders become cult leaders, then you
yeah,
can't talk about politics or without talking about religion, and vice versa.
yeah,
And that is what makes cultish behavior and cults so dangerous, because it becomes impossible to separate
them. Yeah, no, you're
the
so true.
belief from the political and the academic and any other sphere of society.
Yeah.
And if you think about, that's another thing that cults do. Cults, per definition, always infiltrate every single aspect of human activity.
Right,
And
right.
if you look at what's happening in one of the shall we say the mightiest nation on the planet, at least the mightiest Western nation on the planet, the fact that the the hold that a particular leader has on that country is because it uses the influence of religious belief to enforce the control. That's what it's about. And,
Yeah.
and this whole thing, just to get back to the Easter and the death cult, it means that it's a very powerful way of negating one of the strongest instincts of any living thing, which is to remain alive. We will do anything whether to stay alive. And what these cults do, they invert that. Now there are people who will do anything to be able to sacrifice their life for the belief. That becomes the status symbol, to be able to say that I'm a martyr, and that I'm suffering for this belief. And that's what makes it so dangerous, because now you have people who are not afraid of losing their lives. In fact, they will strive to lose their lives.
It's a very, very dangerous recipe. That crazy. But that ties in neatly to our next point, which is that all cults and Christianity especially have got this us versus them worldview, where there's a separation of the wolves and the sheep, so to say. Where salvation is exclusive, to those people who are in the group. So only, for example, only those people who are in Christ, so to say, escape hell or torment, and all the others face eternal darkness. This is all from the New Testament. And then leaving the faith equals, spiritual death, whatever that is. And then in that process, what happens is that outsiders get demonized. Non-believers, heretics, apostates. All of these people are portrayed as serving Satan, and then that justifies excluding them, and even worse at times. And this is so prevalent in in certain strains of Christianity as well. Like, especially, for example, you look at cults like the JWs, some of the more extreme extreme forms of Christianity. What they do is they cut people who don't toe the line, who don't fall in line. They will cut them off completely. Those people don't exist anymore. And what that does serves to do is it serves to isolate. It isolates and it insulates that cult. It isolates them, first of all, from the outside world, and it insulates and reinforces the narratives. Especially if you have this narrative of, yes, Christ said that you are going to suffer for what you believe in, then it really plays into that narrative, and it just reinforces it. And what it does, it's an adopted victimhood, but in that victimhood, people feel special somehow, and it's very grotesque. And it is in every single, there's a persecution complex also built into every single denomination, because ultimately the central figurehead of the religion was persecuted and suffered. So people see this as something to emulate. It's very, very crazy how that works. And I think it's also built into our biology via evolution, that we tend to be very cliquey, or grouping. It was something that really helped us to survive in the past. So it's ingrained into us. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we find safety in numbers, and safety in the numbers of our in-group is way better than the numbers of our out-group. So yeah, it's one would have hoped that we would have evolved beyond that by now, but apparently not.
Not a chance, man. Not a chance.
and religion keeps us very firmly rooted in that mindset.
I know.
Let's acknowledge that. I mean, if we can move away from religion, then we have the odds stacked against us as it is evolutionarily, and now we just can't get away from religion. We just have to cling to it with so much yeah.
And then the next aspect of cult-like behavior is this concept of secrecy and control of the flow of information. So this, again, it's the hallmark of all cults, is that they control the flow of information to the people who are in the cult, and they basically gatekeep what people are exposed to, what knowledge is exposed to. So, let's look at this in terms of, again, you can look at any classic cult. There is, this secretive sense of, we cannot let the outside world in on this secret. This is like special. You look at the UFO cults, they all, you'll find them all like going away and hiding somewhere on some fucking ranch in the middle of the bush. It's very seldom that you find these cults are, out in the open, except when it's like a major religion or something. But and these mysteries that they have are reserved only for the initiates, and this can be, all these little bits of secret information, and in terms of Christianity, it's at first it was things like the infallibility of the Pope, for example, and all of these things were defined as these opaque mysteries that are beyond layman's scrutiny. And it was very strange how they did that. And the second half of it is that they gatekeep knowledge, especially things like exegesis, the canon law. These ecclesiastical structures that they put in place, have the clergy as the only people qualified to interpret any scripture or give sacraments, and then this gatekeeps that information, and ordinary believers become dependent and compliant upon this elite class of cult leaders, so to say, to have access to this information. It's not, I don't know, this is the one point where I think it's more along the cults that go a little bit more on the esoteric side that you'll find this. I don't find this so prevalent in mainstream Christianity. I don't know. What's your take on this, Tasha?
Well, I think it's more it's disguised in a way, but even if you think of the mainstream church, it's very important that you go to church. Why do you go to church? It is so that you can get this. We know that's the real reason, but it's not sold as that. You go to church so that you can, because that is the way that you access the special knowledge that you as an ordinary believer doesn't have access to. You must get that message from the dominee or the pastor or the minister or the priest. So it's a little bit less obvious, in the sense that it's not as if only that sect has access to the secrets, but there's definitely that idea that there is special knowledge that you can only access if you've studied for 7 years, or if you have the special robes or whatever. So I don't think it's completely divorced in modern day mainstream Christianity. I think it's just a little bit disguised. Disguised by the ritual that has become so you have to go to church. Because, I mean, Christians have to go to church. It's an important part of being part of the cult. And the reason you go is because you need to get that special knowledge. You need to have your spiritual reserves. You need to have it filled up. You know, you can't just have. So there's definitely that element of special knowledge that only that you have to do something to get access to.
Yeah. No, that's crazy. So let's just quickly go over this definitionally, because it's very important that we look at these definitions, right? So what is the definition of a death cult, right? A death cult is a group, religious, ideological, or social, that centers its beliefs and practices around death, dying, or the afterlife, often glorifying or ritualizing mortality to an extreme degree. So it's not, there's many mainstream faiths that honor ancestors or consider an afterlife, but a death cult elevates death itself and the promise of it as, a goal or some sort of spiritual power. And, that is Christianity in a nutshell. What else do you do but live your life only to end up in heaven? I mean, it's weird how that works. And the thing is, if you were to present this to any Christian, they would balk at the idea. They would never consider themselves a death cult. Although all the hallmarks are there. It's crazy. I really want to look into this further and actually formalize this into some form of exposition, and I think it's mainly also because in modern usage, this word death cult has a very pejorative edge. So the term is often applied and used hyperbolically to some political and religious movements that romanticize violent martyrdom. But it's also, it also highlights this just under the surface idea that's within Christianity. And analysts label, terrorist organizations also as death cults. So there's this kind of a connection that makes people think, fuck, we're not suicide bombers or anything like that, It's very weird.
It's not good PR. Christianity would never, to talk about a death cult is definitely not good PR. It's not something that any organization, not a modern, progressive organization would like to ascribe to it. But I think it might be argued by Christians that they look, it's impossible for modern Christians to deny the death cult route. I mean, that's just, it's just impossible. Jesus was an eschatological preacher, and death and dying was very much part of the origin of the religion. I think the fact that Christianity is now mainstream means that the sort of the death cult part has been glossed over. But if you just scratch beneath the surface, it's there, and it's the basis of everything. And it's more prevalent, I think, in the Catholic and Orthodox denominations than perhaps in the Protestant denominations. But it's there. It can't be denied.
No, it's weird. It's true what you say. I don't remember ever in a Protestant church, having this macabre fascination with the crucifixion. Sure, there was, there was mention of it, but there wasn't like in Catholicism this fixation on crosses and Calgary and all of that nonsense. It's very strange.
No. That's not something that we grew up with. And the idea of, also the very visual elements of the cross and the crucifix. That's not something that is very prevalent in the Protestant church that I grew up in. But having said that, Dean, it's making a major comeback. I mean, that I'm in trouble at the moment in my capacity as CEO of Kruisvrij, which aims to address this whole idea that crosses are being put up everywhere. So there's a resurgence of the cult of suffering. And if I look at the messages that people post on social media, that's not something that I grew up with. And it's almost as if the main, and I'm talking within the South African Afrikaans context, it's almost as if the Protestant NG Gereformeerde Hervormde Kerk is reverting very strongly back to the Catholic roots, and I say that because I note a resurgence in the idea of the passion play, where it wasn't something that I grew up with, but it's definitely making a comeback, even in the mainstream Protestant tradition in South Africa amongst Afrikaans speakers. And if I look at messages that are posted on social media, there's a lot of emphasis on the physical suffering. That's not something that I'm used to.
Yeah. No, and people always ask me, like, why are you so obsessed with the extremists, and why do you focus so much on the extreme? That's like 1% or like 5% of the total population. And then I'd like to point out to them, like, hello, look at Islam, for example. We have got the same percentage of Islam is extreme or extremists. The rest of the majority of Muslims are peace-loving people who just want to, live and get by their day. But that creates this environment where extremism thrives. It's sort of like you create this damp corner in your house, for where mold can grow. And that's how these religions are. Like they have these damp corners where these extremist ideas can take hold and grow and thrive. And just the next is we're talking about, I'm not saying all religions fit this mold, but we have to be especially aware when ordinarily looking people, ordinarily people are not really prone to this kind of behavior, but it's baked into the cake. So it has this potential, and it matters because death cults manipulate people psychologically. They play to some form of psychological need that people have, whether it be this longing for meaning, a feeling of belonging, or some cathartic release. And these are things that are vulnerable. They're vulnerable aspects of human psychology that gets exploited. Secondly, it matters because of public safety. We have to understand these dynamics. So, especially here, not necessarily so much in South Africa, but in Africa, there's a likelihood that any kind of ritual or some weird religious kook takes people into the desert or the bush or wherever, and then you have these mass suicides and mass rituals that go horribly wrong. So it is a matter of public safety, and it matters because we need to raise awareness about this. People need to recognize the red flags, like when you have a charismatic leader, when you have an apocalyptic rhetoric, when you are being isolated. These are red flags that people need to be aware of. because we need to empower people with information, because if you can question and resist this dangerous kind of group thinking, then we can be more prepared to deal with the extreme cases of these cults. And a death cult, it's not merely an interest in mortality. What it does is it weaponizes death. It turns suffering, suicide, mass annihilation into sacred acts. And that's where most religions promise life before death. Death cults promise life after death. And this ultimate purpose and fulfillment will come through the act of death itself. But yeah, I really want to do like a very, very deep dive on this. I was very glad this morning that I made this connection between the two, because we need to identify these things wherever they happen, because it's not benign. This people say, leave the Christians to do their thing. They're not harming you. They're not bothering you. Nonsense. They cause a lot of harm, and they do impact society on a level that is it goes beyond me. But I'm preaching to the choir here. What do you think, Tasha?
Yeah, when the court case is resolved, then we can have an extensive discussion about the harm. So let's leave a little bit of a cliffhanger. But Dean, this morning when I spoke to you about this evening's conversation, I mentioned something to you, and that's, in fact, that was something that directly led to my deconversion.
Right.
The other thing that is very harmful in this cult of suffering is that it negates the real suffering of real living people in the here and now, and it cheapens the suffering of real people, because it elevates suffering to something that it's not. We should not strive to suffer and to endure suffering.
Exactly.
We should strive to end suffering. We should strive to alleviate suffering. And what this cult does, it elevates the suffering of Christ, particularly around Easter, and thereby equating human suffering, making sort of in a very weird, macabre way. That's Christ suffered way more than you did, so it's okay to suffer, which is just absurd. And to me, that is a very insidious danger of elevating suffering as something that should be aspired to, or something that's good. Suffering's bad, and we should aim to lessen suffering, insofar as it's at all possible. And that's not the message of Christianity. The message of Christianity is suffering is good. Suffering elevates you. It brings you closer to God.
It turns it into a virtue. People find suffering virtuous. Yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah, so I would rather live in a world where we don't find suffering virtuous, where we recognize that suffering is awful, and we should work to get rid of it. We shouldn't work to celebrate it.
Yeah.
And that's my one other thing, Dean, that you and I also spoke, perhaps just as a to whet the proverbial appetite. I mentioned that I watched that movie on Netflix, The Book of Clarence, and I'm
actually going to jump onto that now. We have to do that.
Did you watch it?
No, not yet. No, I'm still hunting for it.
But we definitely have to do a show where we talk, because it's a very clever inversion, subversion. I'm not quite sure what of the story of Christ and the mythology. It's so yeah, that's just something that for the future. So we've got two things, Dean. For the winter, shall we call it the winter of our atheist contentment? We're definitely going to do a show or two about the Book of Clarence. And then as soon as the court case that I'm involved in, and it's not because it's me, I just want to say it's not because it's about me. It's because this is having very real life repercussions. And I think it's something that more people need to know about.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we will get onto that as soon as your business is resolved. What I would like to point out to our audience as well is that this coming Saturday, so this is in 5 days, on the Skeptic Haven channel, I have been liaising with producer Wes, and we have put together a kick-ass panel. So we have got speakers like Dr. Leo Igwe, Mubarak Bala. We have got Holy Humanist, Esther from the Afro Atheist, and we are all going to talk about this topic of reform in Islam and whether it is even possible, whether it is, excuse me, whether this is something that we can even dream of. Because, excuse me, if you look at Christianity and you look at the past of Christianity, back in the Middle Ages, they were crazy. They were whack. I mean, they had inquisitions, and people were, they were the force to be reckoned with. And what happened? What happened to Christianity? They went through this period of reformation, which served as a form of temperance. It sort of like diluted it diluted the drink, to keep it from being so potent. And this hasn't happened to Islam yet. Islam is still in its original form as it was practiced, like many centuries ago. And this is why there is this. It has this extreme edge to it, and it is extremely violent. It is extremely brutal towards women. So, we are going to tackle this topic, and we are going to dissect it from top to bottom. We've assembled a panel of ex-Muslim activists, and we are going to take this apart, and we're going to discuss this. It will be simulcast on the Atheist Republic Cape Town YouTube channel. So you're welcome to watch it over here, or you can go over to Skeptic Haven. You can subscribe there and also view the stream live over there. Next Saturday, this is going to be a kicker. What have you got going on, Tasha?
At the moment, I'm actually lying low a little bit. My buddy from Rethought Hour, he's had some personal issues, so I'm not very actively busy at the moment. Well, behind the scenes, I'm very busy, but I just on the topic that you mentioned now, I'm not part of your panel, but I'll be joining from the sideline because I have a hypothesis why Islam will not reform, and it's got to do with language and translation of holy scriptures, because the one thing that led directly to the Reformation was the translation of the Bible into vernacular, and that is strictly prohibited in Islam. And although there are different offshoots of Islam, there has not yet been anything like the Protestant Reformation, and I don't think it will happen. And the other reason, I think, so this is just my 2 cents what it's worth, I don't think there will be a reformation, is because Islam does not have a central body with as much control as the Roman Catholic Church had.
Yeah, it's true.
Well,
the authority in Islam is relegated to this collection of religious scholars, and they, it's a very weird process of how you even get recognized as one of these scholars. But it's a fascinating deep dive to go into this, and I know we are going to step on some toes.
My comments will be coming fast and furiously from the sidelines. Your panel will know that I'm there.
No, I look forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
Let's wrap it up here, Tasha. I am very keen to go online now and find some of those. Especially in Europe, they make these very how can I say, gruesome scenes of the crucifixion and everything. And I find it fascinating to look at, not the people who are actually performing in the procession, but the people around, the crowd. It's very, very, very telling to see the crowd's reactions to these processions.
To each their own, Dean. I will be engaging in some more crochet, so I will be hooking all in the name of suffering and not suffering and being creative. It was nice to meet up again. I'll see you next week.
You need to connect me, Tate Rakipile. Connect me to this lady. At the moment, we have got 6 on the panel yet, so I'm not promising that we can add another person on, but connect me, and then we can we can see what we can make happen. Okay, guys, take it easy. Tasha, thank you so much, my friend. Have a good rest of your long weekend, and remember, everybody, to thank Judas for the long weekend, because if Judas didn't lay that hot, wet kiss on the lips of the Savior, then it would have all been in vain. You would still be going to work tomorrow. But I think the real hero of this holiday is Judas Iscariot. Thank you, Judas.
Dean, you are very funny. Goodbye.